Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA Show!
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another round of and new MMA Show. I'm your host, Michael Hansen. I do all kinds of magnificent things with my voice and microphones. Chief among them, I'm a professional ring announcer and MMA cage announcer, and I am joined, as I always am, by two gentlemen, my friends who bring MMA punditry to new heights. Mark Prio, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great, man. I went to a little Warriors Cup Muay Thai event in Yonkers on Friday night with one of our loyal listeners, Mike Bacardi. Shout out, Mike Bacardi.
Awesome.
To see our man, Mike Hansen,
Hey.
do his thing. And you killed it as usual. But
thanks,
shout
man.
out to Warriors Cup, man. It was they really put on a great event. I was impressed. It was good talent. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And now I'm ready to talk some more fights.
Yeah, I have to say it was great to announce some fighters. It was awesome. And we are also joined by MMA pundit Omar Artola. Omar, what's going on?
Oh, usual, waiting for my next batch of fights. Did go to the movies 3 times over the weekend. Saw all of the movies. Some of them were not great, and some of them were actually a good time. Green Knight is about 2 hours and 15 minutes. Don't bother. That shit was such a disappointment in the bottom of my heart.
What was the winner of the weekend? Give us the winner.
I think the winner from a fun standpoint was Jungle Cruise. I enjoyed myself.
All right.
I gotta say, listen,
Makes sense.
one joke you'll hear in there that I took away is fantastic. You know, one of my ex-girlfriends, she was cross-eyed. All right. It didn't work out. You know, we just didn't see eye to eye. Just that's straight up gold right there, as far as I'm concerned.
Get the one hand clap from me.
And Stillwater, if you want something to mess with your heartstrings, Stillwater was a hell of a movie. But it's nice to spend some time with the wife. You know, me and her don't get to spend as much time with her being in school and jobs and all this stuff. So
Okay,
it's
I
nice.
like getting the cultural recommendations.
Indeed.
Maybe a future segment on the show and new
Omar's
cultural.
movie minute.
Yeah, Omar's movie minute. Well, boys, on the agenda for today's show, we're going to start right at the top, as we always do, with On the Marquee, our first segment. Then we're going to jump into last Saturday's UFC Fight Night, Hall versus Strickland. Then we're going to go right to our pre-air rankings, and then we're going to finish the show looking ahead to this weekend's UFC 265, Lewis versus Gane. So let's start at the top. Tonight, the name of the marquee, AJ McKee, who this past Saturday night at Bellator 263 defeated Patricio Pitbull at 1 minute and 57 seconds of round number 1 via submission by guillotine choke. Omar, I'm going to start with you this time. What did you make of AJ McKee's performance and stopping the reign of Pitbull?
I just want to take a moment and fully embrace what that pick truly meant to me. I fucking love AJ McKee. Okay. I love that whole story. I've talked about it last week. I love the whole family bit. But more than anything, I had that feeling, right? Like you just had a feeling. Mark, you had the crazy feeling. You know what it is.
Yep.
But to see him go in there, put on one of the most flawless performances we've ever seen against one of the most dominant champions in MMA right now, and to just put that boy out. It reminds me a lot of John Jones and Machida, as far as especially how it ended. But, what a fantastic moment. Probably woke my wife up with how loud I was screaming in that moment. It was a beautiful performance. It was a beautiful performance from him from beginning to end. His management of distance, you could see Pitbull was completely caught off guard by not being able to get inside, and the head kick landed, and it was just go from there. And I loved every minute of it, and I was losing my mind.
Mark, give me the one word that you would have to say when you think about the performance by AJ McKee on Saturday night.
Put me on the spot. I mean, wow is what comes to mind. It's a simple one, but I mean, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to be the first to welcome you to the AJ McKee era, because it is here.
Amen.
And it is happening. The man looked incredible. He becomes the featherweight champ. He becomes the featherweight tourney winner. He becomes the face of Bellator. He becomes arguably the greatest featherweight on the planet. I mean, the man staked his claim to everything on Saturday night. You can't look better than he looked. We believed in his skills. We believed in his mindset, and he did it. The guy did it. His advantages came into play even quicker than and I'm assuming Omar as well, thought that they would. I mean, it was basically the first strike of the fight. You know, they were kind of staring each other down. Head kick, Pitbull's wobbled, swarms him, drops to the floor. He's walking away thinking he won. Pitbull gets up. To his credit, he has to rush back for the guillotine, puts Pitbull nearly out again. I think in about one more Mississippi, Pitbull was going to his knees out cold. I mean, he basically finished the guy fight twice. He finished the prior Bellator GOAT twice in the same fight.
And let's be clear, if you watch that fight, AJ was very purposeful about that moment, right? Because he knew he had basically just knocked Pitbull out. Referee didn't call it. He might have thought Pitbull was still there. That's an arguable decision. You can go either way with that. If it had been stopped in that moment, I wouldn't have been mad. Pitbull was looking everywhere but where he needed to in that moment. Like, I would have been fine with a stoppage there. But it went on, and AJ then I can't think that he didn't imagine in that moment, like, I've already knocked him out. Let's put him out now. Let's put him to sleep. And basically knocked him out and submitted him. Again, one of the greatest fighters currently fighting in the same moment, all of which was under a minute. Yep. What the hell is going on? If you want a word, legendary. That shit right there is how legends are made. That was a legendary performance. That goes up there with TJ beating every break off of Barao. That goes up there with all of those great performances. That was a legendary performance.
Yeah, and a clean performance. Never touched. I mean, you cannot arrive more than that man just arrived on Saturday night.
Yep.
And two sort of homegrown talents from Bellator who have both become stars. It has felt for many years that Bellator sort of gets a lot of recycled UFC fighters who are sort of post-retirement or sort of trying to make another run at things with Bellator and just continue to make some money. But both McKee and Pitbull are both sort of Bellator guys from the start, especially McKee. I mean, McKee is not even long in the tooth yet, and 18-0, all in Bellator, right?
Every single one since his pro debut.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't write it better than that. Honestly, you can't write it better than that.
No, to me, he is the biggest homegrown star that Bellator has ever had, and I don't mean that you have to have your first fight in Bellator like McKee did. I just mean guys who became a star while in the promotion. They have had Pitbull, Michael Chandler, Eddie Alvarez, Douglas Lima. They've had their guys whose star was created under the Bellator banner.
Mm-hmm.
But none of those guys, at least to me, have ever felt like they were as big of a star as they could be. And this is it for Bellator now. They cannot miss this opportunity. This guy has everything that you want a guy to have. He can talk, he can dress, the confidence. He's got the street cred, the skills in the ring. I mean, I could go on and on. He has all of it, and they cannot fumble this. I really think this is Bellator's shot to have the biggest star they've ever had. They got to put the marketing behind him, the money behind him, and I think that this could be the one that raises Bellator's perception to a lot of casual fans.
Yeah.
Just piggybacking off what you just said, let's go right into this question. How do you guys think AJ McKee would match up against UFC fighters on the UFC roster?
Significantly well. Significantly well. I mean, the reality is to Mark's credit, a lot of these fighters like Douglas Lima and some of the other champions that are there, or even some of the other top elite guys, I've never felt that they've ever escaped the UFC shadow, in the sense that whenever we start talking about those potential super fights, right? Those, if Douglas Lima fights somebody at 170, if he fights Kamaru, if he fights Izzy at 185, like, once we really start getting in there, then my confidence in the Bellator fighters generally will start to wane, and I'll start to kind of go towards the UFC fighters, because I've seen more elite level fighting between most of those guys. I don't feel that way about AJ. There is something very different about the way AJ carries himself, the way he presents himself, almost the Babe Ruth aspect that he has, to stand there, look at you in the face, call his shot, and then slam that bitch out of the park, all in the same moment. He I think, has transcended past that UFC shadow to the point where people know who AJ McKee is. They might not even know what Bellator is. They might think he's in UFC because they're so casual.
Great point.
But they know who AJ McKee is now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think a good part, at least, of what has allowed him to reach the level that you're referring to is that he had a Pitbull to overcome. To Pitbull's credit, that he has been around that long, that he was that widely regarded in MMA, that now he got this catapult off of Pitbull. Whereas maybe these prior guys in Bellator, we saw them doing great, but they didn't have that guy to catapult off of, like McKee has had here, that is making everyone, like, you can't say, oh, I don't think AJ McKee is good. You can't say it, because he did what he just did. So he has had that, and now, like I said, he is Bellator's rocket ship, and I hope they get it right.
If we take the first three guys that he talked about, right? We take Volkanovski, we take Ortega, and we take Holloway. I am not confident saying either one of those three clean sweeps AJ McKee. Not by a long shot. Those fights are all super competitive. He has dangerous advantages in a lot of those fights, especially with his reach. Volkanovski is basically going to look like a child next to him, I'm pretty sure. Brian Ortega is probably the biggest danger, I think, in general, out of those three. Because I respect the way that AJ McKee strikes, and I respect the way that he maintains distance. Holloway, I think, is going to have a big issue, frankly, in that fight. I don't think he's going to get run over or anything like that. I think it's a very competitive fight, but I don't think he's going to show the same type of advantages as I think Holloway has shown in some of his other fights. But Ortega, and he's already talked about how the fact that Ortega's triangled him when he was 19, he wants to get that back. And I just think that he's in a completely different spot 6 years later from whenever that happened. And I'm down to see either one of those fights. I think it's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of times with these where you can look at it and, you'd pay to see it, you'd love to see it, but in your mind, you're like, the UFC guy is probably going to take that. And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I would take McKee or I wouldn't take McKee, because, I'd have to think about it a lot more than this. But there are none of those fights where I'm doing that, where I'm saying, the UFC guy would take that. Every single one, I'm like, fuck, I don't know. I'd have to really think that through. There's advantages on both sides, and that's a testament to how good he is.
100%.
Absolutely. Where do you think Pitbull goes from here, Mark?
So, of course, Pitbull is still the lightweight champ of Bellator. So, the guy was the double champ. To me, they can go one of two ways, and they kind of both involve coming back to this fight. Either they just do it right away. They say, all right, McKee just beat Pitbull at featherweight. Let's do McKee Pitbull 2 at lightweight and see if McKee can be the double champ, therefore increasing his promotion and all that. Or they have them each defend the belt one time, so that you would think you see Pitbull dispatch of someone, maybe get a little bit of his aura back, his confidence back, and then you come back to that rematch. But either way, it's hard not to come back to that rematch when you have two guys on that level, and one of them is, and they're both still champs. My caveat, though, that I would do if I'm running Bellator is that the number one contender at lightweight right now is Patricky Pitbull, obviously the brother of Patricio Pitbull. So for me, if I'm building to McKee Patricio 2 at lightweight. In the meantime, I'm having number one contender Patricky fight a number one contender fight. Maybe you put him against Sydney Outlaw, someone else who's near the top, or maybe you don't even do that. Maybe you put him against someone lower to make sure he wins, which it's funny because in the UFC, you can't really do that without catching shit. In Bellator, they kind of get to do that still because it's not really under the same type of scrutiny. They could put Patricky against like a guy who's borderline top 10 and no one's really going to say anything. So you put him over there, you get him another win, maybe it's even a knockout win, and then you have ready-made, if McKee happens to beat Patricio again and become the double champ, then you have this great storyline of you say, all right, here comes Patricky now to try to defend it, to avenge his brother's loss. Couldn't say the word avenge. And you go from there, and that's a great build. And the even better part for Bellator is that McKee probably wins that fight too, and now you've just built this guy up even more. Right. So that's how my wheels are spinning for what Bellator should do here.
Omar, would you want to see an immediate rematch?
You know, I did, but now I just want to see him go for the 155 belt now. Screw the rematch. Just go for the 155. I mean, imagine beating that man twice and just taking everything he's ever worked for.
I know.
I mean, you're just robbing him of everything he has. One man. You got one of his divisions. You chased him up to the other one, and you took his shit there too. And then you're gonna have your little brother little brother?
Honestly, I always forget who's older. I think you're right, but I always forget this.
Patricky looks younger, but he might be older.
I'm gonna look it up while we're talking.
Yeah, look it up. Either way, you're about to have your brother. If it's little brother, it almost stings a little bit more as far as I'm concerned. But you're about to have your brother come and try to beat this man's ass to get the belt back. I mean, Mark, you just put it in a way that I wasn't even thinking about.
Patricky's 1 year older. Patricky is the bigger brother.
Okay, so all right. So
I think our minds just assume he's not because he's the worst one. But yeah.
But
Patricky sounds like a younger brother name.
That's a fantastic. It does sound like a younger brother name. Like it sounds like he's littler, like a smaller Pitbull.
Tricky.
Yeah, but he's bigger. He's the bigger guy.
Yeah.
But the crazy part is if they do this rematch at lightweight and McKee tries to go for both belts, it's going to be even harder for Pitbull, you would think, because McKee getting to put on 10 more pounds, he's already so much bigger. You know, Pitbull is a natural 145er who's putting on these pounds just because he went to do the super fight with Chandler and now happens to be the champ. The size advantage is probably going to be even worse for him at 155 than it was at 145.
Well, but I mean, here's my thing, right? Once you get up to that point, especially in the elite level, and you've got somebody like AJ McKee coming for your throat, that's what you get for being champ.
Oh yeah, I'm just saying. Like to him, he's probably like, "Fuck, I lost the one where it was even closer for me."
Yeah, I mean, this dude is going to be a threat at this point to Pitbull, the way Pitbull has basically been a threat to the entire division like forever.
Yeah,
and this is what it feels like to be on the other side of that coin. And while I want to say I feel bad for Pitbull, like I kind of don't, you know, like,
I mean, the guy's had a hell of a run, you know what?
He has.
And I don't want to act like it's over. If they do fight again and Pitbull wins, it's not like I'm going to be shocked. I'm going to pick McKee, but I'm not going to be shocked. Pitbull's that good. So also, I'm not trying to just dismiss the guy because he lost quickly.
Yeah, even if Pitbull loses again to AJ McKee, you're not going to tell me that Pitbull's going to lose to basically anybody else. Like I pick Pitbull still against like 98% of the people that go up against him.
Yeah, maybe Bellator would let him go and he would slide over to the UFC and we get to see some of those. Sign me up for that.
I don't see Bellator letting go anybody that's even remotely close to a gold nugget. I honestly think AJ McKee, they're going to throw money dead in his face.
No, not McKee. I'm talking about Pitbull.
No. I know, but I'm talking about like because you know AJ McKee going to the UFC is almost an immediate thought after that performance, right? Like we got to get him in there. We got to get him to fight somebody. I see like Scott Coker just like being in a strip club and just throwing shit at him. Just you want another 100,000? Here you go. Oh, you want $1 million? Take it. I don't care.
Agree totally.
Here.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Rename the company AJ McKee Bellator.
Yeah.
The AJ McKee Fighting Championship.
Yeah.
So after this colossal star-making win, there was a lot of chatter about Scott Coker talking about this might be the perfect time to have a cross-promotional fight between Bellator and UFC. With AJ McKee fighting Alexander Volkanovski as a cross-promotional featherweight super fight. I don't know how it would work with the belts. Would AJ McKee be the belt holder if he were to win, and vice versa? But Scott Coker also went on record saying that he doesn't think it's going to happen because that doesn't seem to be the
Because
UFC's
it's not.
business model. And the UFC has never done anything like that, to my knowledge.
No.
So, Mark, who would you pick in this fantasy matchup, and why do you think it's never going to happen?
If McKee fought Volkanovski?
Yes.
Oh, man. It's hard for me.
I mean, since it's probably never going to happen, give me the boldest pick you got, baby.
I have never. See, it makes no sense. I have never loved Volk as a fighter. I'm saying. I mean, let's clarify. I love him as a clear top 5 fighter.
He's incredible.
I never he could fight Max 10 more times, and I would pick Max every time, even though Volk has beat him twice. And I agree that Volk won on the cards too.
Okay.
I'm not one that thinks Max won. Max won the fight, but he didn't win enough rounds, if you know what I'm saying. So I don't know. He doesn't grab me. I'm about to pick Ortega over Volkanovski. So I'm just not. I'd probably pick Volk over the rest of them. I'm trying to think who else is out there. But so I've never been fully sold on Volk for whatever reason, even though he's been an awesome champion and he's clearly amazing. So you ask me who I'm going to pick. I think I would pick AJ McKee. Again, might sound a little crazy. I think that's where I would go. The only thing is this fight is never going to happen. Like you said, the reason Coker was talking about it is because McKee was talking about it first in the post-fight presser. You know, credit to him. The guy, like we said, he knows how to build a star, and he's throwing out anything he can throw out right now. So people can be like, holy shit, yeah, AJ McKee, imagine that. And Coker jumped right on it, of course, as the promoter that he is. But he's right. He said he knows it's not going to happen, and that's because it's not going to happen. The UFC does not do these things. I guess when you're on top, you don't have a reason to do this. Obviously, we see Bellator do it with Risen, and we've seen some others. But when you're on top, there's no reason to go that route. And knowing Dana the way we know Dana, I think we all feel pretty safe that fight is not going to be happening.
Yeah.
Realistically, from a business standpoint, it makes zero sense for the UFC. Like, it's lose-lose for the UFC.
Right.
Correct.
You know, they put somebody up that they're touting as the best featherweight in the world, basically. You put him up against a company that has basically been trying to say that we are better than you for years now. If off of one loss, you lose your credibility as a promotion to then produce the best fighters, then you just kind of shit the bed, where you basically just pass the baton to Bellator. And now Bellator can kind of stake a claim like, well, we beat the UFC like with this homegrown fighter. We trained him, we did him from the ground up, and we beat their guys. And if the UFC wins, what are they? I told you so. Like, it's
not
the expectation.
It's not a risk worth taking for the UFC.
Not at all. Not even close. We'll never see it, especially as long as Dana White's there. We'll never see it.
I mean, has that ever happened where like a different football league overtook the NFL or something? You know, that kind of scenario.
Honestly, the closest thing to cross promotion stuff has been Pride. When they allowed UFC fighters to go over to Pride for certain tournaments and stuff like that. But I mean, that's the closest thing that I could think of when it comes to the UFC specifically.
And Pride was number 1 at that time.
Oh, okay.
If the UFC didn't cross promote Brock Lesnar against Fedor, they ain't cross promoting Volkanovski against McKee. Because you can't get bigger than that one, and they said no thanks.
Yeah,
that would have sold everything. That's facts.
Yeah, that would have sold out Wembley.
Yeah.
Any other final words on McKee versus Pitbull?
Remember the name. AJ McKee. He ain't going nowhere.
Okay.
And remember, Omar picked the submission. Remember.
Well, speaking of good picks, I had a good pick. That was this past Saturday night. Also, UFC Fight Night, Hall versus Strickland. I said it was going to be a consequential fight with a consequential decision, and it sure was. Sean Strickland defeated Uriah Hall via unanimous decision, earning all 3 of the judges' scorecards at 50-44, 49-46, and 50-45. So, Mark, I'll start with you. What were your initial thoughts on Strickland's win?
Yeah. Me and Omar read this one wrong, man. I was disappointed in Uriah. He had looked like he was finally starting to get over that hump where his performances were meeting his potential and his talent. And, he's older. I felt like maybe it was a late push coming from him. And he just didn't really show up the way that I thought he was going to show up. He wasn't. Some people, so I didn't actually get to catch that fight live. I was at a wedding that I got out of just in time for McKee, thank God. But so I had gotten some texts saying how inactive he was and he wasn't throwing. And I was like, man, it's that Uriah again. But then I watched it and that actually wasn't my take. He was in there. He was throwing punches. He was coming at him. And it took me a while to figure out, like, man, what is the difference in this fight right now? And I really think it was Strickland's defense. He was so intelligent and responsible defensively. Every time they clashed, he would land 2 or 3 and Hall would land 1 before Strickland would slip out or roll off a punch, or he kept his range so well where he would be in it as he threw, he'd be just out of it as Hall threw. It was really his defense that impressed me the most. And I know, as we had said last week, we both, Omar and I, thought that Hall just at some point in a 25-minute fight would be able to land a hard shot on Strickland that would change things. And it was just that defense was really what stood out to me. It never happened. He never had a chance to land anything that was flush. And credit to Strickland, man. He put it on him. Active, never stopped moving, never stopped going forward and engaging, but again, while being responsible. And he did exactly what he had to do. He fought a perfect fight, got the biggest name on his resume, and now he's got to be taken seriously.
Omar, what do you think was missing in this fight from Hall?
Actual, like, attacking. It drove me crazy watching this fight and to watch, Strickland put the pace that he put on him and Uriah just pot-shotting him, just a jab here, reset, a hook or a cross here, reset. He was throwing one at a time the entire time. And to Strickland's credit, he has apparently the ability to just throw shit for 5 rounds continuously without getting tired or slowing down or anything. Mm-hmm. So I can see how that's a really a pain in the ass to deal with. You can only imagine what it looks like to just have all of this stuff coming at your face constantly all the time. But the thing that, at least for me looking on the outside, that was frustrating for me was Strickland is full of holes, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. The way he strikes, he leaves himself wide open for a variety of things. But I'm assuming it's his pressure that doesn't allow these people to get anything off. So he kind of gets away with it. But if Hall had at least thrown a few kicks, changed the pace up, break up the rhythm that Strickland was setting, you know what I mean? Whether it was a leg kick, a body kick, a teep, a fucking front kick to his, something, anything. Strickland was coming straight forward. Throw a front kick in his face, do something. But the pot shotting, the one at a time, was just for 5 rounds, my guys. It was killing me because I know I've seen what Uriah Hall can do. You know what I mean? We've seen it on TV. We've seen it while he's fighting. I've seen him train in real life. I know what the kid can do. Yeah. And that fight drove me crazy. And if it drove me crazy, I can only imagine the level of craziness that Uriah Hall was going through at the end of that fight. No one can be beating himself up more than he is right now to himself.
So I agree with you, Mark. While watching that fight, I also had the thought of just being impressed by Strickland's defense. He started the fight off with some kind of modified Philly shell. He kind of had this sort of, Philly shell. He threw it up there to start the fight out. But throughout the whole fight, I was really impressed by Strickland. Every time Uriah fired something off, Strickland just does such a good job of just sort of making it messy by throwing he's kind of would scramble the signal, just kind of throw his elbows, throw his arms out.
Great phrase.
What?
Scramble the signal. I like that.
Thank you. I'm going to trademark that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so between his defense and his pace, it was just a frustrating night for Hall, man. He just couldn't get anything going.
Frustrating too, because that is exactly what Sean Strickland does.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like that was something different. Like, if he's watching tape on Sean Strickland, that's what Sean Strickland does. So it's not like anything threw him off the game he was expecting in there.
Yeah, credit to Strickland for he's able to pull the fight into his realm.
Yeah.
God, he's such a dick, though.
I will say this, though, and he is a dick, and I am not really a Sean Strickland fan, but after the fight, I feel like he does redeem himself somewhat by being somewhat candid and somewhat self-aware. I mean, his quote in the cage in his interview, what did he say? Something like, if it wasn't for fighting, I would either be in jail
or making meth or something.
Or making meth in a trailer somewhere. And it's just, you gotta appreciate that level of self-awareness and that level of honesty.
He's a very two sides of the coin talker. He 50% of the time, I feel like he comes off funny and like can even kind of charm with how open he is. And then 50% of the time you're like, this dude is a psychopath and he's making me uncomfortable and he should maybe be in jail.
Right.
Like it's only one or the other. Like, even so, he had that nice, in the cage post-fight. Then post-fight presser, he says he wants to be the first guy to kill someone in a cage.
Yeah. I don't
said that.
What?
Yeah, I don't know what the plan was there, but yeah.
And it dead serious. He was like, yeah, it would be, I don't know if he used the word honor, but he said something like that. Yeah, like I'd really be into it if I could be the first person to kill someone in a cage. Like, I was like, dude, like, get the fuck out of here. Like, no more, you're retired. We're not letting you fight anymore. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. He's a weird man.
And that's extra tone deaf coming off of the recent pay-per-view with Conor, and with Poirier, bringing so much attention to Conor, making, thinly veiled death threats against him.
Yeah.
So for Strickland to talk again about like murdering people in the
with
cage
a smile on his face.
I know.
With a smile on his face. Pure glee.
And he's said plenty of other weird stuff too. He's a strange guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. So Omar, let me throw this back to you. Where do you think Hall goes from here?
It's kind of hard to say, right? It's like the whole thing with Uriah Hall's career is like every time something like this happens, they like throw him all the way to the bottom of the line and they give him some random person and we kind of see what happens from there. Honestly, I don't really know. I'm kind of like torn on how I feel about Uriah Hall in this moment, because it's like it's never had anything to do with this man's skill or this man's technique or this man's ability to actually do the shit that he can do in that cage, but it has to do with whatever mental roadblocks come into his head when he's fighting. Maybe the pace just put him behind the 8 ball the whole time and he just couldn't get out in front anymore. I don't know what it is. I don't want to make things up or anything like that, but it's like super frustrating to watch him give away fights, because that's kind of what it seemed like. He had every opportunity to make that fight at the very minimum competitive and he didn't. And it's like, it drives me crazy to watch him when he fights like that.
The thought occurred to me of, imagine how far Uriah Hall could have gone had he had his skill and physique and athleticism combined with the tenacity and finishing instinct of someone like a Conor McGregor or something like that. How far could he have gone at middleweight, man?
Yeah. I mean, he would be probably one of the richest and one of the most elite fighters that we would have. Especially, I mean, think if he never had those bumps, if he just kept going up like you're talking about, kept winning fights, kept beating people that were elite, kept roundhousing people in the chin. I mean, yeah. I mean, his limit was endless as far as I was concerned, especially at the beginning of his career. But it just kills me to watch him not live up to that potential. It really does.
Mark, who would you like to see Hall match up with next at middleweight if he sticks around?
So I would think he's sticking around. He his post-fight comments, no, I don't mean in the cage or anything, but I'm saying that he released like on Instagram or Twitter, whatever it was, certainly seemed like he was trying to get right back in there. But yeah, to Omar's point, I don't think he should be getting reset so far. I mean, at this point, he's older. He's Uriah Hall. He's given you 18 fights in the UFC. I'd like to give him a chance to say maybe that was a rough style matchup. Let's give him another name who's relevant and see if he can reset himself here. And the name that comes to mind for me is Edmund Shabazian. He had won 4 in a row to start his UFC career. Obviously, coming off his win over Brad Tavares, a lot of people were like, wow, this kid's a big deal. He caught a lot of hype, maybe a little too soon, and has since lost 2 in a row himself to Derek Brunson and Jack Hermanson. But both of those guys are at a more elite level than Uriah Hall seems to be at right now. So I think that fight makes sense. You give Edmund a chance to fight a guy who's right there near that top 10, maybe not as high as you threw him when he took his losses. And you give Uriah a chance to turn back Edmund and get back on his horse. So I like that matchup just because you get one of those guys being relevant and moving upward again.
Okay. Well, we know what is next for Sean Strickland. The UFC has already announced that Strickland's next opponent will be the returning Luke Rockhold this coming November 6th at UFC 268. Omar, what do you make of this new matchup and the return of Luke Rockhold?
I love this matchup. I've been watching Luke Rockhold train now, for a little bit as far as online and Instagram and stuff like that. With the videos that he releases, he looks great, man. He's had a lot of issues with his legs and his knees. I know he's had at least one staph infection in the recent, last 5 years or so that was like left a hole in his leg basically at one point. So I know he's dealt with a lot. He relies on his legs almost more than 50% of the time when it comes to the way that he fights. His hands are almost inconsequential when he fights. He really uses them to set up his kicks, to measure distance and stuff like that. But you're never going to see Luke Rockhold get into a straight up hand fight with somebody and just throw down. It's not going to happen. Luke Rockhold is very much about his question mark kicks, his roundhouse kicks, his body kicks, his leg kicks. And if any one of his legs aren't working right, he's not going to fight, because then he just can't fight. So I'm very interested to see him come back, hopefully healthier than he has been. Mark, I don't know if is he still training with Hooft? Is that still a thing?
I mean, at least fairly recently he was. I can't say I could confirm it over the last couple months, but I saw at least maybe 2-3 months ago some stuff with Hooft.
Okay. So, I mean, if he's still training with him, hopefully they've, figured something out where that partnership actually bears some fruit. It's been a rough go, especially Hooft in general has kind of had a rough go in MMA in the last few years. But Luke Rockhold and him specifically as a pair have kind of had a rough go recently. So I love the matchup though. Stylistically, I think it would be a super fun matchup. There's going to be a lot of violence. I would be very interested to see if it goes to the ground at all. I wonder if Luke Rockhold gets pushed to the point where he ends up going for takedowns, because he's very good on the ground. He's a very, very great
on the ground
grappler. He trains obviously with a lot of the guys from AKA, but his jiu-jitsu is like top tier, is a very elite. So I'd be interested to see if he ends up utilizing that, if he feels too pressured by the way that Sean Strickland fights.
Mark, Luke Rockhold has had fights now at light heavyweight. Sean Strickland has had fights at welterweight. So what do you make of the size comparison of these two guys going into their matchup in November?
I personally don't think that that's too relevant, because Strickland was a bigger welterweight who feels like he is now in his appropriate weight class at middleweight. Rockhold, I guess we kind of always thought, this guy could try light heavyweight. He feels like he should be a middleweight too, though. I think they're both in their proper class. So I don't think that's a huge factor. I mean, frame wise, Luke might be slightly bigger, but I don't think that's a huge factor. I do love the style clash in that. So I think Luke will absolutely look to wrestle. I don't even think he'll have to be pushed. I think he will come out and say, "I'm going to wrestle." But I just love that it's basically going to be Luke's kicks trying to keep that range, keep the fight in kicking range, or closing the distance himself to initiate takedowns, versus Strickland trying to get inside that kicking range to punch, which is his primary weapon for sure, is his hands, and pressure Luke while also trying to make sure he doesn't get overzealous and get taken down. So I love that back and forth, that contrast between the two styles. And I think it's the exact type of fight that Luke should be coming back to. You know, he's had some rough times, as we know. We've seen the guy sleeping in the octagon a couple times here.
Yeah.
And he seemed like he had it in his head, which I get it. You're Luke Rockhold, you're a former champion. I get it. He seems like he had it in his head that he should be coming back and fighting Paulo Costa or Robert Whittaker or someone like this. And to me, he shouldn't be. To me, this is the perfect fight. Come back, fight Sean Strickland, who looks great right now, but he's not quite on this elite tier, and show us that you can beat Sean Strickland. And if you can, then hey, restart the Luke Rockhold hype train and we go from there. Yeah. But I think it's a perfect fight. And I think it's a great fight for Strickland too. It's obviously the biggest fight of his career. If he gets Luke Rockhold on his resume, he's off to the races. So I love it. I think it's a perfect fight. And I'm glad that Luke has now accepted it. If you look on social media today, the shit talk has already begun. Strickland, before he knew Rockhold accepted it, was already saying how after Luke kind of brushed him off in some comments that he was offended and he was going to come find Luke and he'll take a misdemeanor charge just to be able to punch Luke in his face. So it has begun. So it should be entertaining.
Apparently they both walk around the RVCA circle.
Yes.
So I guess that gym is going to be a hot zone for the next few months.
Yeah.
One wrinkle that I really like about this matchup is that Sean Strickland, if there's anyone that Sean Strickland reminds me of, is he reminds me of a young Michael Bisping. So in a weird way, both in terms of the way that he fights and the way that he is, I mean, he's weirder than Michael Bisping, but he has that like kind of a dick quality that Bisping had when he was in his fighting days. And stylistically, what's that?
It's a good comparison.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, in terms of, you know, in the octagon, Strickland kind of has a somewhat similar style. He, you know, his main weapons are his pace. He doesn't have, you know, knockout power per se, like other middleweights do. And also, you know, he's a talker. He's going to talk on the weigh-in stage. He's going to talk in the cage. He's going to talk on Twitter. And so in a weird way, it's kind of like Rockhold's is trying to get revenge of the ghost of retired Bisping by fighting like Bisping's American clone.
That's funny.
Yeah. I didn't even like Bisping until like 4 years ago. So
I love commentator Bisping.
I thought that dude was, I mean, he is kind of a dick, but like he's like
Winners never win, baby. Right here.
What is it? Oh, his book?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, he's a dick, but like I don't know. I've come to love him. He's just such a funny guy. I love his insight into a lot of things. And like
great.
Every time listening to him
guy.
is just so entertaining because of all his little catchphrases and stuff. Listen, buddy. Like
Well,
I love all of his shit. It just cracks me up, man.
For sure.
Yeah. The UFC now they've really developed quite the little stable of color analysts between Bisping and DC and Cruz and Felder.
Yes.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah. It's a good crew.
All right. So let us now turn our attention to our next segment. This is the Prio rankings. So Mark Prio, tell us who has risen, who has fallen on the heels of this UFC Fight Night.
All right. So this week we got a few risers and a few fallers. We have Zaruk Adashev moving from number 30 to number 16 at flyweight on the heels of his win over Ryan Benoit, where he destroyed Ryan Benoit's poor knee. We have Jason Witt moving from number 66 to number 43 at welterweight after the war that he had with Brian Barberena. And we have Jin-Yu Fry, moving from number 36 to number 28 at women's strawweight after claiming a clear unanimous decision over Ashley Yoder. Those are the movers up. The fallers are the aforementioned Ryan Benoit, moving down. I had him fairly high still. I had him at 12. He's down at 17 now, mainly on the back of the fact that he beat Sergio Pettis some years back, but starting to get a little far away now, and he's starting to rack up some losses, so he may fall even further in the near future. And then again, the aforementioned Brian Barberena moving from number 37 to number 44 at welterweight, coming off his own loss. So none of those are anything too terribly noteworthy. But one move that is noteworthy is if we shift over to Bellator, where we had Mads Burnell becoming the new number 2 ranked Bellator featherweight, both in my own rankings and in the official Bellator rankings. So if you watched Bellator, if you watched our boy AJ McKee, I hope you also caught this co-main event because it was a banger if there ever was one. Mads Burnell took a unanimous decision that could have been a split decision. It could have gone the other way. It could have gone any fucking way possible over Emmanuel Sanchez. I will say I've only seen it the one time, so I haven't watched it back to rescore it yet. So I can't even really give you my take, but it was a crazy fight. Props to both guys. They both went all out, but a huge win for Mads Burnell. Emmanuel Sanchez, as many of you listening, I'm sure know, has been in Bellator for a long time. He's been there since 2014, and the only losses he has ever taken are to Pat Curran when he was on top, to Daniel Weichel, which he then avenged, and to Pitbull twice. You know, the guy is top tier. He was ranked number 2 at featherweight, behind only Pitbull and McKee going into this night. So he's not quite on their level, but the guy is very good. And credit to Mads. He really brought it here. He was a guy with a lot of promise when he came into the UFC, who ended up going 1-2 in the UFC. But if you look back on those now, one loss was to Michel Pracheres at lightweight, where Pracheres was a tank. And now Pracheres is a welterweight, whereas Mads is a featherweight. So that's a 2-weight class difference there. And the other was to Arnold Allen, who was a top 10 ranked featherweight, who Mads was beating for more than half of that fight, maybe, before getting finished. So the guy has skills. He had never delivered, and this was it. He delivered now. He's a guy who, like I said, he had that hype and people had kind of forgotten about him, and now poof, here he is. He's at the top of the Bellator featherweight division. He looked fantastic, and he could easily, if they don't do McKee Pitbull right away, he could be that title defense. If they have McKee defend the featherweight belt, it could be Mads Burnell. And not to mention, the guy killed it in the post-fight press conferences. I mean, he had people in stitches. He had people cracking up. The guy was slaying. He's ready for the spotlight. So he's here now, and he may even be getting a title shot. We shall see. So that was a big win for him. And then from there, we'll do a quick rundown of the rest of the fights.
Yeah, please do.
The rest of that Bellator card, there was a few relevant ones. We had Usman Nurmagomedov, obviously the cousin of Khabib, TKOing Manny Moro in the first round. He's looked fantastic so far, as all these guys in this camp have. It seems like no one who Khabib coaches ever loses. It's tough to gauge. I will say, let's wait and see him to get a more legitimate opponent before we really start talking a lot about him, but the guy looks fantastic. Beyond that, you had Islam Mamedov debuting in Bellator against Brent Primus. Took a split decision off him in a really close fight, really hard to score. It was a lot of Mamedov taking him down and not doing much, while Primus threatened submissions off his back. So I had a hard time with it. I did give one round to each of them, and then it came to the third, and I really struggled with scoring the third. But either way, Mamedov takes a split decision and has now gone 20 fights unbeaten here. So it's a big win debuting in Bellator, and he might be a name to watch. So we'll see what he does. And then the last one in Bellator was Goichi Yamauchi with a great KO in the first round, getting himself back on track as a borderline top 5 lightweight in Bellator there. Then we shift to some results from the UFC main card, one of which was Cheyenne Buys with an awesome head kick that led to a TKO. Great win for her, got her first UFC win and got the bonus. And I'm sure some of you have seen the videos, some pretty awesome reactions for her. So happy for her.
Yeah. When a head kick win is 1 inch away from being a head kick DQ.
Oh, yeah. Perfectly timed.
And I mean, credit to that girl for her reaction after getting kicked was to get right back up. My reaction would have been to cry on the floor. So credit to that girl for just being a warrior and being even getting up after something like that. It's just straight up madness. But you got to give that girl credit for being tough as shit.
You also could have seen her. I don't know. Maybe some fighters in that situation would have, cried to the ref and tried to plead their case that it was an illegal kick.
Right.
Facts. That's true.
I mean, even on the replay, that looked.
It was close.
Really close.
Oh, I know. I had to watch it for a second. I was like, "Whoa, okay, we're good. We're good."
Apparently, she was talking about that was something that they had seen, that the coaches had taken a look at, of the way that the girl stands up from being in a bottom position. And so they had apparently talked about, when you see her getting up, throw that kick.
Wow.
And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's a gamble and a half. But
yeah, man,
it worked and it literally paid off. So good on her, man. I'm super happy for her, and I buy into Cheyenne buys.
Is it a Bays? It's Bays.
Yeah, it's Bays. Did I say buys? That's my fault. It's Bays.
It's all good. It's a fun.
I'm reading my little list of results here, but yeah, it's Bays. But yeah, so just to round out the main card, we had Jared Gooden get his first UFC win with a KO that turned Stoltz's body off. We had a really interesting debut from Melsik Bagdasaryan, who was pretty impressive, really clean, some pretty striking, and eventually won by head kick KO in round 2. So he may be a name to watch. And then we had the war that I mentioned earlier between Jason Witt and Brian Barberena, which was just fantastic. But the decision did go the right way, in my opinion. Jason Witt getting that win.
Okay. All righty. Well, with that being said, let us now turn from the past and look into the future. And gentlemen, we have this coming weekend, UFC pay-per-view, UFC 265, Lewis versus Gane, a great card. So let's start right at the top. Derek the Black Beast Lewis taking on Cyril Gane of France. Mark, you've been talking for too long. I'm going to start with Omar on this one. Omar, what are your first thoughts about this matchup? We have Derek Lewis, who is just knocks everybody out. 25 professional victories, 20 knockout finishes, 1 submission, by the way. I need to look back in the records to see who he submitted.
He got a Kimura, I'm pretty sure, on somebody.
Oh, did he?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Recent?
Bell.
No, I don't think it was recent, but he got a Kimura on somebody.
Okay. He is taking on Cyril Gane, who is undefeated as a professional with a very different kind of a record. Whereas Lewis has 25 fights, 25 knockouts. Cyril Gane has 9 fights, 9 wins. So still undefeated. So Omar, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
It was.
I think if you look at the fight on paper, I think Cyril kind of has a lot of advantages. The way that he fights, he's very technical. He likes to stay at range. He's one of those people that likes to throw his shots and then get right back outside. So there's never really a lot of firefights in his fights. He tends to neutralize a lot of guys, and he's very good at it as well. I think that he's probably not going to have the size advantage, I wouldn't think, in this fight, but at the same time, he'll probably have the speed advantage as a result.
Mm-hmm.
With all that being said, I'm pretty sure Lewis is still going to knock his ass out. Probably going to be like the 3rd round, 4th round, something like that. Might even be the 5th round. Lewis could probably lose every minute of that fight up until Lewis knocks him out.
I mean, that makes me think of the Volkov fight. I mean, Volkov was kind of running a striking clinic on Lewis, hurting him to the body with a lot of those long kicks of his, until I want to say that it was like in the last minute or like the last 30 seconds of that fight.
Yep.
And he knocked him out.
So I was at that fight. Okay. I was at that fight. And I remember being with my wife, and we're standing there and we're watching this go down, and we're, I don't know, like almost at the end of the 4th round at this point. And we're just like, this is bullshit. Like, we came here to watch Derek Lewis win this fight. I'm not here to watch Volkov pepper him to death. This is not what I'm here for. So I want Derek Lewis to win, man. Like, let's go. 5th round comes out. He starts cracking him. Everybody in the arena goes crazy. I think I might have hit my wife by accident. I got crazy and she might have caught an elbow or a hand or something. Felt bad afterwards. I didn't even feel it then. It got wild, man. We all lost our minds. He goes and he knocks him out. We're all cheering. I made sounds, and I don't really know if I can make them again. It's one of the best experiences ever to like, especially when you're rooting for a guy, for him to be that far down, and then for him to just come back and put this man out to sleep. There's nothing better than going to an MMA event. I love him.
Mark, give us your thoughts on Lewis versus Gane.
So I still don't understand why this fight is happening for an interim title, but if I ignore that, it is a great fight. Derek Lewis, what is there left to say about Derek Lewis? If you don't know Derek Lewis, he is a giant, hilarious human who can lose fights for every second that they last until the moment that he wins by KO. So, one of the most popular fighters in MMA. On the flip, you have Cyril Gane, who has been really a perfect fighter so far, both style-wise, result-wise, and in actuality. He's 13-0 in Muay Thai. He's 9-0 in MMA. The guy's 22-0 in combat sports. He has been perfect. It's an amazing style clash. You have Lewis, who is this powerful one-hitter quitter type fighter. How do you beat a guy like that? You keep him at range. You pick him apart. You use varied weapons. You keep him defensive and on his toes. You stay responsible defensively. That's everything Cyril Gane does. On the flip, you have Gane, who's this pretty clean, intelligent, evasive fighter who can also wrestle and who has slick subs. How do you beat a guy like that? The way you do it is when it only takes one. All you got to do is land one. So the clash is fantastic in my mind. It's a perfect, each guy can stop what the other guy does. There are a couple things that concern me for Lewis in this fight. First off is he hasn't looked great against elite strikers. The two that come to mind are JDS, who finished him, and Alexander Volkov, who picked him apart for the entire fight. Obviously, as we just mentioned, he came back and won, which was incredible. But it still is not the most encouraging thing for me to think back on, especially because Gane is probably a better striker than both of them. He is a better striker than both of them. So I'm not super encouraged by that. Also, the second thing is that I feel like Lewis is the type of guy where if he gets taken down, he might be susceptible to being caught in a leg lock or some type of submission like that, which we know Gane will go for. We've already seen him pull off a heel hook in the octagon. I feel like Lewis a lot of times is thinking so much about that power get up, or he's kind of just sitting there on the mat, making sure his cardio's in place. And I'm a little concerned about him leaving a leg open, since it's something that's so easy to do as compared to like leaving a neck open or something like that. So I worry about that. So taking all of that into account, I got to pick Derek Lewis by knockout. I'm not here to pick boring Cyril Gane. Not what I'm here for. I'm here to pick the Black Beast.
Okay.
H-Town,
Let's
baby.
go.
Ride or die Derek Lewis. Knockout.
Okay.
Let's go.
Omar, with that being said, you got to pick for us, babe.
Let's go Derek Lewis KO round 4.
Round
Put
4.
it in the books.
Okay.
Let's see. Didn't think of a round. I will say round 3. Please don't bet this. Don't follow me here. I'm allowed to pick with the heart sometimes, and that's what's happening here. Derek Lewis, round 3 knockout.
Round 3. We have round 3 knockout, round 4 knockout. I am going to take the boring pick in this one. And I'm going to say that Cyril Gane is going to be too safe of a fighter. And he's not going to tire the way that Volkov did, which was one of the things that led to Volkov's downfall in that fight. I think at the end of that fight, he gassed just enough for Lewis to get to him. Gane is just too defensively safe and responsible. And I think that he's going to pick his shots, obviously. I think he's going to stay on the outside. He's going to stay away from his power. He's going to be too athletic. He's going to be so good at circling away and getting away from Lewis. And Lewis is going to get frustrated. I think he's going to chip away at him with shots. He may secure a takedown. He may, exhaust Lewis with submission attempts. He may get a submission. So I think that Gane has too many ways to win. And I'm going to pick Gane. I'm going to take Gane by submission in round 4.
That is a very well said and smart breakdown of this fight, and it's probably the one that's going to be right, but fuck that.
That is incorrect, sir. If there's one thing I know about the Black Beast, is this man always shows up with some shit you didn't even know he knew how to do. Every fight he goes into, and you're like, man, he's probably not going to beat that guy. He throws a round spinning back kick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Every time you're thinking like, nah, he's not going to win this fight. He's submitting a guy with a Kimura when he doesn't even know a ground game. Like, don't you count him out, bro. He's going to end up like knocking Cyril Gane out with a flying knee or some shit.
Of course.
It's going to be, look, I'll tell you what it's not going to be. It's not going to be boring. I don't care that Cyril Gane is in this fight.
Oh, I hope it's not, man. I hope.
Dude,
I think
me too much.
After Derek Lewis and Ngannou won, I don't think Derek Lewis wants that shit to ever happen again for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
I don't see this being a boring fight as much as Cyril Gane.
It's going to be in Houston too. You know he wants to put on a show.
100%. And he wants that. I mean, look, he knows at this point, if he wins this fight, especially in spectacular fashion, he goes home with the belt. He goes home with another highlight reel. That's money in the bank. That's a pay-per-view point in the next fight.
Yep.
On a rematch that God knows he needs to get back.
Yep.
Or,
they both
put on a show anyway.
Yeah.
You know? I love it. Don't you guys count Derek the Black Beast Lewis out.
Pick them. Don't you guys me?
Well, any guys out here listening?
Yeah.
If you were thinking about going with Cyril Gane, you don't do it.
An extra wrinkle that's really interesting about this matchup is that Cyril Gane is not your typical heavyweight fighter, and he's going up against a guy who is like the most quintessential heavyweight, who just knocks everybody out in Derek Lewis. Cyril Gane, because of his Muay Thai training, Muay Thai background, he and his God-given athleticism, he moves like, I would say, like how light do we want to go? I would say welterweight. He kind of,
I was gonna say middleweight, but yeah, he moves really well.
He moves and fights. He fights like he's a welterweight, and so he doesn't have to like, play the heavyweight game of seeing who lands the bomb first. He can stick and move. He can use technique the entire fight, and he doesn't tire, which also kind of makes him kind of not the most exciting heavyweight to watch. So.
Yeah, I mean, if he's able to neutralize Derek Lewis, then we're going to have a very boring fight. But my thing is that he needs to be perfect for 25 minutes straight in order to win this fight against Derek Lewis. Because if Derek Lewis gets one shot on him, one clean blow, if he's not knocked out, that boy is going to be he's going to dance around that entire ring until Derek Lewis follows up. Like there is zero room for error when it, like the same way that Stipe had basically zero room for error with Ngannou. Gane is going to have zero room for error when it comes to Lewis. Lewis is only getting better. There's no reason for us to think that he's not improving every day when it comes to his cardio, his striking, his wrestling, potentially his submission game. I think that if Cyril Gane sleeps for half a second, he's going to be sleeping for a lot longer than that.
Right. And he's only 31 Gane, which is quite young for heavyweight.
100%.
Yeah. Any last words, Mark, on this heavyweight main event?
Nah, I think we covered it.
All right, let's go on to the co-main event of UFC 268. Jose Aldo Jr. taking on Pedro Munoz. Omar, I'll start with you. What do you think of this matchup and Jose Aldo stepping back in the cage?
I love this matchup. Jose Aldo kind of has shown that he's still very game. He's still very much Jose Aldo. I think the biggest difference, if we look at his recent performances to his past performances, where I think he used to be uber dominant, was just the gap in skill level with a lot of these fighters has just shortened. It doesn't necessarily mean that Aldo has gotten any worse. I just think a lot of these guys have gotten better, and the caliber of fighters has gotten better, which, if we're giving credit where it's deserved, that says a lot about Jose Aldo, for him to have been so far out ahead, for him to be here now, 10 years later, basically having run WEC as long as he did, and still be at the cream of the crop, still winning fights and still causing problems when he loses fights. So I love the matchup. I think this is a perfect matchup for Pedro Munoz, for us to really figure out where Pedro Munoz is. I think Pedro Munoz is probably going to have a tough night. If we're being honest, stylistically, I think this is probably the worst matchup for Munoz. I would probably pick Aldo striking over almost anybody's in that division, especially. And I see experience, the actual ability that Jose has to win a fight, to keep his ass off the ground, and to make use of his kicks. Hopefully, he hasn't been kicking as much as he used to, but hopefully uses kicks and uses his heavy hands to walk away with a victory.
Mark, what are the keys to victory for Jose Aldo in this fight?
Well, let me just say first, I love this fight.
Okay.
This is a great fight. I even had flashbacks of Jose Aldo, Uriah Faber in WEC when I was watching Pedro Munoz destroy Jimmy Rivera's leg in his last fight. So it's funny, this is the matchup that we've gotten here. So I'm sorry, you asked me the keys for Jose?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think the cardio is a factor here. How Omar was kind of touching on that. Aldo's still just as good, but maybe I think the one thing that's a little bit different is that his cardio is slipping a little bit. So I think it helps him that he's in a 3-round fight here and not a 5. He still comes out guns blazing, and that's why he tends to fade a bit. So I think what Munoz needs to do is force Aldo to move. He has to feint, he has to pressure, cut off the cage, make Aldo react. And I think the fight could swing based on that cardio. But on the flip, to answer your question for Jose, I think he needs to really stand his ground and try not to move and force Pedro into somewhat more of a firefight, especially because Jose is the one with more power. They're both known for their kicks, although they're different kind of kicks. Jose's is a typical leg kick to the thigh, whereas Pedro's is the calf kick. But that's not really a weapon that I see being effective against Jose, because he has that classic Muay Thai stance where he's so light on his front foot that he just uses it to check. And I don't think he's going to be able to really deliver calf kicks like that. Most guys can't do that because they're afraid of getting taken down. But when you're Jose Aldo, you don't have to worry about that ever. So I don't think that's really going to be a factor. I think it's just going to be, to me, it hinges on that difference of can Pedro make it a more active fight, circling around the cage, make Jose move, in which case I think first round favors Jose either way. But I think if Pedro can make it that kind of fight, it could swing toward him. And I think Jose just needs to stand his ground and make him slang and bang a little bit. And I do tend to favor him. I think he's the more dangerous fighter. He's more of a threat to finish. Again, it is only 3 rounds. So I'm gonna go with the old dog to get it done one more time. I have not hopped off the Jose Aldo train at all, as you guys know, in some of his prior fights, and I'm not ready to do it here. I think he gets this done.
Speaking of old dog, fun fact about Jose Aldo: in spite of all the miles he has on those legs, Jose Aldo is only 26 years old.
What?
No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
I was just gonna say, wait, you messed that up.
What the hell?
No, but he is only 34. In fact, he is the same age as Pedro Munoz, which is incredible.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It is wild that Aldo's only 34 for sure.
Yeah. I mean, he's been fighting since what, like 19 or something like that. Even before the WEC, he's been fighting for a long time.
Yep.
Yeah. I should have gone with a even younger age to make it more obvious that I was kidding.
Yeah, I thought you just messed up.
No, I was being
got me.
being sarcastic. Because I've seen those memes where it's like, fighters whose ages will surprise you, and it's like, oh, Jose Aldo's only 34.
Yeah.
Omar, before his recent victory over Chito Vera, Aldo took one of the worst beatings we've ever seen at the hands of Peter Yan. So even if he gets this win, what do you think that beating took out of Aldo, and how many more fights do you see this 34-year-old with a lot of miles on him? How much longer do you think he's going to stay in the game?
I mean, we talk a lot about guys kind of past their prime, a lot in private and stuff like that when we text. And, I was a big advocate of Anderson Silva putting up his gloves long before he did. Just because it was difficult for me to watch somebody who no longer fought like themselves and basically allowed themselves to just continuously lose because they were shells of themselves.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way about Jose Aldo, at least not yet. He's still very dangerous. He still presents a lot of danger. His weapons, I think, haven't gotten to the point where they're obsolete or people know exactly how to defend them. I mean, the reality is you have years of tape that you can watch on Jose Aldo, and you still are going to get your ass beat probably by him. His hands are top notch. His fight IQ is, I think, really what sets him apart, and his grit. He is the type of person, to Mark's credit, that he will stand right in front of you. He won't move, and he'll dig a body shot right into your solar plexus. Yeah. He'll stand and bang with you, and he'll take shots. The kid's got a chin. He's been dropped, but I don't think he's ever been put out that I remember. Right? Like out.
Did Max put him out?
I don't think he put him out.
He was like dazed, but yeah, I don't think he's been out.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever been slept. Right? We definitely gotten a couple TKO defeats at this point. Oh no, I'm Connor.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
Who's worse? Who's worse than us?
For a second, I started wondering if you were actually talking about Munoz, and I was like, wait a second.
Oh man, we're sorry.
14 seconds.
Oh boy.
Oh God. Anyway,
but that's different. Connor at featherweight was a giant and had the touch of death.
Correct.
Yeah,
the point remains. The guy has a great chin.
He does. He does have a great chin. Even throughout his entire career, it's still the one time that he's really been put out like that. Yeah. Even people like Frankie Edgar, it's just starting to happen to, and there's a dangerous trend that we're seeing with Frankie Edgar right now, having been put out a couple times recently. That's not really the case with Jose Aldo. Like, we haven't really seen a continuous trend of that happening. So I'm still very much okay with Jose kind of still being at the elite level. He's still very dangerous. I look forward to Saturday.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Marching down this card, another great fight is Luque versus Chiesa. Both guys coming off recent awesome performances. Michael Chiesa coming off of a 4-fight win streak with wins over Neil Magny, Rafael Dos Anjos, Diego Sanchez, and Carlos Condit. Vicente Luque also coming off a 3-fight win streak, most recently defeating the former welterweight champion Tyron Woodley, also Randy Brown and Nico Price. Mark, I'll start with you. What are your early thoughts on this matchup heading into this weekend?
Yeah, so this is another awesome fight. This card is really under the radar with how good it is. I think once the Nunez fight fell off of this card, a lot of people were kind of like, that card's whatever now. Card's pretty damn good. This is a great fight. And the winner of this fight is officially going to vault into the elite of welterweight. So there's some big ramifications in this fight here. It's another one that's a fascinating style clash. It's reminiscent of the old school UFC matchmaking where it's just striker against grappler. Every time they're on the feet, Chiesa is going to be in danger. Every time they're on the mat, Luque is going to be in danger. They're both going to be trying to survive in each scenario, vice versa. The difference may be that Luque is actually comfortable on the mat. It's easy to forget that his jiu-jitsu is very strong. He's such a banger that you kind of forget he's got that part of his game. He's no slouch there. So just off that, it leads you to say like, well, maybe you should take Luque in this fight. But the thing that I keep coming back to, because I kind of keep ending there. I'm like, all right, maybe I'm going to go Luque. I keep coming back to the fact that Chiesa might just be that good at implementing his game that even though Luque might be better defensively on the ground than Chiesa is standing, it might not matter. Like Neil Magny is not that dissimilar from Vicente Luque, and Chiesa handled him no problem. So it might just be that he's that good at imposing his game. And it really, wherever this fight takes place more, if there are more minutes standing or more minutes on the ground, is going to determine who wins this fight. That's really how this breaks down. It's just so close. I keep flip-flopping back and forth. I probably will change my mind again between now and Saturday, possibly multiple times. But I kind of go back to Chiesa's track record. I just feel like he has a bit more of one and is a bit more proven against different styles. So for the purposes of picking right now, I'm going to go with Chiesa to get it done in a close one.
Okay. Omar, what are your thoughts on this matchup, and give us a pick ultimately?
To be honest, this is my favorite matchup of the night. This is the one I think I'm looking forward to the most. It's definitely stylistically super interesting. I am a huge fan of Chiesa. I've been a fan of Chiesa since Tough, and kind of to see his evolution too, just basically just being only a grappler back then, to kind of seeing him evolve and really even have a striking game, even if that striking game is to get you to do what he wants you to do, he still has something there, and it's still very dangerous and it still works for him. So I think I personally like Maverick's skill set when it comes to this matchup. I think Vicente presents a lot of difficulty on the stand-up just based off of power alone. There's a real discrepancy in the way that Chiesa will end up hitting Vicente and the way that Vicente will end up hitting him back. Hands, of course, but even the legs, I think especially. Vicente has tree trunks for legs. So I can only imagine how hard those leg kicks or any shot from those legs is gonna be taken. I think we see Chiesa go to the ground early and often. And I think that if anything Chiesa has worked on more than anything is probably still going to be his grappling. I think he knows what his bread and butter is. I think he knows where he excels. The camp that he works in now back in Spokane, they're pretty big when it comes to, ground control, takedowns, working on the submission game, working to get better positioning. So I think that he's going to end up using that, just because getting into a firefight with Vicente Luque when, one guy basically has an automatic and the other guy has a pistol, just doesn't seem like the smartest thing to do. So if Chiesa is as smart as I think he is, I think we'll see a lot of groundwork.
You got a pick?
I don't see him being able to finish Vicente personally. So I think Maverick wins by decision.
I'll say that as well. If I didn't say that before, I'm going to go decision also.
I actually think I'm going to agree with both of you guys. It's such a hard fight to pick. I could also see Luque by decision. I can also see Luque by finish.
Yeah. I could definitely see Luque by knockout, 100%.
But for now, I think I'm leaning Chiesa decision.
It's going to be a lot of Chiesa attempts to enter. All that has to happen is he gets cracked too hard one time, and that fight changes on a dime. So it's a risky fight for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. All right. Any other fights on this UFC 265 pay-per-view that you guys want to spotlight?
It's nice to see Jessica Penne back.
Yeah, and her opponent as well, for that matter. Kovacevic hasn't fought in forever, so the return of two women who will try to re-enter the talks in that division.
Yeah, Karolina Kowalkiewicz concerns me. Just her recent string of losses and just her seemingly to be out of the mindset of being in this game just concerns me to see her back. I hope something has changed. I hope she wants to be back in there. I hope something has put an edge back in it. But if she comes in the same way she's been coming in, one, she's going to get cut. I guarantee you she'll get cut if she fights the way she's been fighting lately and loses again. But she's going to get hurt. She's 100% going to get hurt.
She took a year and a half off, so you would like to think that she has hopefully had some type of mental reset. And then in addition, it's not a friendly matchup in terms of like she can't lose, but it's a friendly matchup in terms of that Penne is not really one to hurt people. So at least if she loses, you would think it wouldn't be violently. So, you know, it will be interesting to see how she comes back, but it's one of the better matchups she could have asked for, I think. I think we definitely got to touch on Tisha Torres, Angela Hill 2. Rematch from 2015 that Torres won, but I would say they're a lot closer now talent-wise than they were in 2015. But really the storyline of this fight for me is that Angela Hill's got to deliver. Maybe through no fault of her own, she failed against Michelle Waterson and Claudia Gadelha, which were her two big shots. They were both shaky decisions. You could argue she won both of those fights, but this is another big shot now, and she needs to put a stamp on this one. If she loses here again, I feel like she's kind of starting to enter a little bit of that outside the ranking territory where I'm not sure how many more of these she gets. So this is a big chance for her. So I would like to see her, and Tisha's no slouch. Don't get me wrong. But I'd love to see Hill step up and get this one done.
Yeah, Torres she's tough, she's scrappy, but you know, I'm a big Angela Hill guy, and I have been. And I admit now, I will confess to you that I'm a Angela Hill homer, because where I got my start ring announcing at Friday Night Fights in New York City is also where Angela Hill got her start as an amateur, turning pro, I believe, there as well. That's awesome. Yeah, she's from New York. She learned Muay Thai in New York, and she got her start taking fights at Friday Night Fights years before I got my start ring announcing there. But ever since I found that out, I'm like, Angela
It helps that it's really easy to be an Angela Hill fan. The girl's awesome.
Yeah, she's
entertaining, super funny.
Exactly. Yeah, she's got a great sense of humor, and she's an exciting fighter. She has great Muay Thai.
That'll be a good fight.
And she's, you know, if you've watched her career from kind of the beginning, you can see her evolution pretty clearly. That girl used to drive me crazy with her striking, because she would throw punches and she would do this shit whenever she was throwing, and I was like, are you closing your eyes in the middle of a fight? Like, are you for real? But she's very much different at this point. She's a fun woman to sort of watch. Even her Instagram, and you know, I'm a big nerd, so all the cosplay that she does when she goes to the weigh-ins and stuff, like I love all that shit.
I loved it when she did the Street Fighter character.
I was just gonna say the Sagat one was the best.
So accurate.
That was
Omar, what character was that?
Sagat.
Right, Sagat. Yeah.
He's the Muay Thai guy.
Right. Yeah, that was so dope when she did
that. She did another one from Street Fighter 2. She did Dalsim, where she dressed up like the Middle Eastern guy, or I think he's Indian actually.
Indian, yeah.
And then she was doing like the little thing that he does with his head in the game. Yes. She's such a fantastic person to follow.
She's great.
And I love watching her fights, especially more recently. The only thing that always gets me about her is she's the type of person to basically like put cruise control on for the first 4 rounds or 3 rounds. She sets it to 85 and she goes, right? She's off to the races. She's putting in her work. And then somewhere along the line, whether it's she thinks that she has the fight won, or I don't don't know what it is, but the gas comes off. And she almost tends to do what she thinks is just enough, or I'm assuming she thinks is just enough. And that's where we end up with all of these close ass decisions, because if you get one close decision, that, you know, we know what the judges are. Shit happens, right? Yeah. She's had countless close decisions. At some point, you got to realize that it's probably something you're either doing or not doing to get these close decisions. Because she has a lot of these girls in bad positions in a lot of these fights, but there's something that's not firing off, whether it's the finishing instinct or maybe worrying about her cardio, perhaps. I'm not really sure what it is, but she lifts her foot off the gas almost every single time in all of her fights. And it puts her in those weird ass decision positions. And I'm hoping, really hoping, because she talked about it in her last press conference, where she's like, I might have to just go in there and start like beating bitches up and just being mean and nasty and taking them down. And, you know, because she knows that she's just grinding out these close decisions. She can't do it anymore.
Right.
I mean, the person that comes to mind as you're saying all this, which this is what I was saying as well when I was saying she's got to find a way to put a stamp on it. But the person that comes to mind, at least for me, is Jorge Masvidal.
Yes. I knew you were going to say that.
He himself had a lot of close decisions, some of them that I thought he won, but he was able to be self-aware and sit back and say, you know what? Some of this is on me. I can't keep being in these close decisions. And as soon as he flicked that switch, his career changed. And I hope that Angela Hill can do the same thing.
Yeah, same. I want good things for Angela Hill, man.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. Yeah. All right. Any other spotlights?
Yeah. So my fighter to watch on this card is Rafael Fiziev. The guy has been otherworldly with his striking thus far. Decimated Renato Moicano in his last fight. He is absolutely a name to watch. I already have him ranked 24 at lightweight. I have Bobby Green lower than that, which is his opponent, for those that don't know, but I can tell you. Let's look. So sorry, I have Fiziev at 23 at lightweight. Bobby Green 31. So I already have him ranked above the guy that he's fighting, simply on the strength of beating Moicano. But really, I think this is a great matchup and a great test for Fiziev, simply because Green will not let it be easy. He won't go away. He'll be in his face. But on the same note, I think it's also a real chance for a showcase for Fiziev because of all those same things. Green is going to be there. He's going to strike with him. And if Fiziev is as nasty as he has looked so far, this might be a showcase for him on Saturday.
Nice. Cannot wait for that one with the Kazakhstani.
Oh, and then one more that I want to note. Sorry, Omar, did you want to say something on that one?
You might be going to it too. I'm not sure, but we got to mention the man, Song Yadong.
Yeah, you go to that one first. I'll save mine. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Song Yadong he's never in a bad fight. He's never in an exciting fight. He recently lost to Kyler Phillips, who recently lost himself in that weird should have been a draw business that happened there. And if you remember that fight, you know, Song Yadong is almost kind of like a tank. He's very much a come forward and just kind of beat your face in kind of guy. Yep. Kyler Phillips is very much the kind of guy that doesn't want to get hit at all. And he's, you know, the kind of guy that's going to use his jab and use his length to kind of keep Song Yadong, you know, keep getting hit, moving away, and won a very dominant decision as far as I was concerned, and bloodied up Song Yadong in that fight. But before that has had some fantastic fights, very close fights, some fantastic finishes, and super interested to see what happens here against Casey Kenny, because Casey Kenny is not a bitch.
Yeah, dude, both of these guys are right there outside of the ranking. So this is a big fight for them. So someone's moving up and someone's moving down here. They're both kind of at a crossroads point in that division where they've both kind of just sniffed those rankings, took a loss. Now they're outside. So yeah, neither of them is going to want another loss here. So I imagine that will be a scrap.
Absolutely.
The one I was going to touch on was Manel Kopp, who not many people can make this claim, but the guy's looked super impressive in 2 losses. He's 0-2 since coming to the UFC. Both close fights against Pantoja and Matus Nicolau. And he's looked great in both of them. He really, you watch the guy fight and you're like, man, this guy could be a contender at flyweight. He's had some of the same issues maybe that we were just talking about with Angelo Hill, where he hasn't put his foot on the gas, it seems, at the right times. He even, when he turns it on, it'll look like he's like the clear better fighter in the cage, and then he'll kind of drift back to letting himself be controlled. So he's had he's been an interesting guy through these 2 fights, because obviously, as I said, he's 0-2, but he's managed to still have these moments where you're like, wow, this dude is nasty. So, you know, this could be it for him. You know, you don't want to go 0-3 in the UFC, even as much as his name is respected. You go 0-3, you might be out. And he's not fighting a slouch either. He's fighting Ode Osborne, who is coming down from bantamweight, so he's probably going to be the bigger fighter. So I'm interested to see what Kopp does here. I'm hoping that he can put a similar stamp type performance and you know, announce that despite the rocky start, he's going to be a name to watch at flyweight. And we could always use some more names at flyweight, because it's probably the shallowest division in the UFC right now, if we're not counting women's featherweight, which is about 3 people.
That's true. Yeah, right. All right. Any other spotlights, guys, before we get out of here?
Not really. I think if there's anything really to talk about real quick, I don't know if you guys have been watching the Olympics. I have been watching some of the wrestling Olympics and kind of curious to see exactly, you know, how many of these guys might even consider working their way into the MMA realm. I mean, you've got, I never really realized how many countries really actually do wrestling and are fucking good at it. Like, I was watching a wrestling match between, I think it was, I want to say India versus Kazakhstan. And in my head, Kazakhstan, you're not beating dude from Kazakhstan in wrestling. This man baby dragged him for like the match. His name was Ravi. And apparently the Indian wrestlers are like, go by like Madonna names. Like they don't do their last names. They go by one name. So this dude just walks into the ring. His name's Ravi. And he just came out there. This dude tried to take a shot on him. He grabbed him from underneath and just went whoop, and just put him back on his back. These are some bad boys that are in wrestling right now. And I mean, are we going to see an Indian contender potentially, or maybe from some countries that we're not even aware of that are significantly fantastic at wrestling? I was watching the Olympics and it just gave me that thought. We just had the first African-American girl who won
that's right
a gold.
Yeah, she was awesome.
In the Olympics. Are we going to see her? Are we going to see her versus Kayla Harrison potentially?
Let's do it.
You know, like the Olympics recently just had me kind of charged up, wondering how many of these people are going to make the transition, if they even have thought about making the transition, because wrestling still to this day is still going to be the best base for starting out in MMA.
Yeah.
I'm always a sucker for the Olympians transitioning to MMA.
Dude, they're so good, man.
You know, when you're getting announced and you're so-and-so Olympian, it's like, you know, brings it to another level.
Yeah. And in the boxing world, they often I know Michael Buffer, anytime somebody had won Olympic gold, he says that in his intro of them, like after winning Olympic gold. Yeah, as he should. Not so in MMA, but maybe because like Bruce never said that about Ronda.
He did. No, he said it. He said it about Ronda. He said it about Henry
in his intro.
Yeah, I thought they did.
Yeah, he did, and I'm pretty sure they said it about DC too.
No.
Yeah.
Well, not DC.
No, you're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Ronda didn't.
He didn't. He was an alternate and he had the kidney issues.
But Ronda also didn't win gold. She won
silver, I think, right? Or bronze?
Pretty sure it was bronze.
They definitely said it for Cejudo. I know that they said it for Cejudo.
Yeah, I'm pretty positive. Too. Yeah, Ronda won bronze. Yeah. But yeah, I really think they did say it for Cejudo. Now I got to look back, but I feel like I remember that.
Either way, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty interested to see what comes out of that, because I think it'll be some interesting storylines, especially once we start getting, you know, we've been talking about Marvin Vittori being the first Italian to kind of get to that championship level. And like, if we start bringing in people from countries we didn't even really realize weren't a part of this system here, I mean, shit's gonna get fun, man.
Yeah, I'd love to see an MMA fighter from India. That'd be so cool.
With the name Ravi, like a fucking rock star. Are you kidding me?
Yes, Mark.
We have Arjan Buller, right? Is that his name? Or KB Buller? I'm blanking. Who is the champ of ONE FC right now?
I really meant
talking
UFC.
about the UFC.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
ONE FC is going to have a lot more guys from that region of the world.
Oh, exactly. Yes. It's
right.
based in Asia.
But I'm just talking about like, you know, once we get to the top two, because I don't even think ONE FC has, you know, these Olympic athletes and stuff like that. So just be interesting to see what happens. These Olympic athletes tend to get a little bit more like preferential treatment when it comes to their trajectory in MMA. They don't generally have to go through the same hurdles, I think, as everybody else.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, MMA in the UFC has got to be the most global, diverse sport there is.
100%.
It's got
everybody throws hands all over the world. Doesn't matter where you're from.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, boys. You ready to get out of here?
I think it's time.
All right, man. Well, if you guys are still watching this or listening to this on your podcast platform, thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. And until next time, any parting shots?
Drive safe. It gets crazy out here. I've been dealing with thunderstorms and all kinds of crazy nonsense out here. Be safe out there, guys.
Love you guys. Thanks for listening. As Mike said, please subscribe. Keep telling friends if you have them who might be interested. We're trying to grow this thing as much as we can. We appreciate it. We will see you next week.
Catch me this weekend on FS2.
Yes.
I will be ring announcing for XFC at Grand Rapids.
Representing for the boys.
Fox Sports 2. Do not miss it.
All right, boys. Peace.
Later.
Peace.